Hi everybody, it's me again. While doing some research for my next Finalist by Tim Exile video, I stumbled across something that I figured I'd make its own installment. And in fact, it's a technique that can be used alongside the previous video, exporting stem groups, and the next one, which will be about processing already mixed material with Finalists, such as live recordings. So this video is going to be about running multiple instances of Finalist in your DAW. Why would you want to do such a thing? Well, for one, it can help you capture all of your stem groups in one pass instead of two until the aux output bug is fixed in version 1.0.2 or whatever it's called later this year. It can also be helpful if you wanted to set up multiple different Finalist mixes and A/B compare them, say with the solo buttons in your DAW. And there are probably other reasons why you might want to do this that I haven't discovered yet. Multiple instances will run in sync with each other automatically, as long as you use your DAW's transport controls rather than the ones located in Finalist. So before I get started, a couple of caveats. I'm running a 2021 MacBook Pro with the M1 chip in my studio, and it has enough horsepower available to run multiple instances of Reactor and Finalist cleanly. But if you have a computer that's old or underpowered, it might not have enough juice to pull it off. Also, I haven't tried any of this on Windows, but I see no reason why that should matter, nor should doing this in something other than Ableton Live, which is what I'm running here. So with that out of the way, let's get started. To demonstrate, we'll pick up where we left off with the project from my previous Finalist video, exporting stem groups. To recap what we did in that video, we inserted 5 new audio tracks in our Finalist mix project, one per Finalist stem group that we wanted to capture. Then we set the inputs of each of them to the specific individual outs from Reactor that correspond to the Finalist groups. Channels 3 and 4 for drums, 5 and 6 for bass, 7 and 8 for backing, 9 and 10 for lead. Aux is supposed to be on Reactor channels 11 and 12, but due to that bug in Finalist versions 1.0.0 and 0.1, we had to make a second pass with aux reconfigured for the real group it was based on, so that we could record it with one of the working Reactor stereo pairs. So instead of doing that like we did in the last video, we will instead use a second instance of Reactor and Finalist, and we'll make our aux reconfiguration there so that we can capture it in the same pass as the main groups. Again, if you're seeing this video once Finalist version 1.0.2 comes out, you won't have to do this workaround, but it's still useful for demonstrating how to run multiple instances of Finalist. All right, here's the Ableton Live set, aka project, that we saved at the end of the last video. This is that weird little live piece that I made entirely with Sonicware devices called 10spot. It's in 10/8 and it consists of 22 stems over its 10+ minutes length. To start, I'm going to duplicate this Reactor Finalist track on track 1 here, and it will take a moment for it to copy everything. We're talking a second instance of Reactor, a second instance of Finalist inside of it, and a second copy of all of the stems along with the analysis tables inside of that. So in this case, there are 220 or so minutes of underlying audio that I had to make a second copy of. Once we have our second instance, let's pull it up and go into stem setup. Now we'll do exactly what we did in the previous video. Namely, I'll change all of the tracks currently assigned to lead, which is what aux is configured for here, to off. Then I'll switch all of the aux tracks over to lead. In this case, there are only 2 of them. Of course, if your aux is configured for backing, you'll want to do all of this with backing instead of lead. Now we'll have this second instance of Finalist go through its reanalysis, and it will probably start playing back automatically when it's done. You can just pause or stop it when it does. Okay, The original instance of Finalist on track 1 will be giving us our 4 main stem groups: drums, bass, backing, and lead. This new second instance will just be giving us our tracks that were formerly on aux, now reconfigured for lead. So all we have to do now is set up the input for our aux lead audio track here. In the top drop-down box is the source, and in this example we want 2 Reactor 6, which is the name of the Ableton track containing our second Reactor Finalist instance. And this second drop-down is which channels to use. Since aux has been moved over to lead as our bug workaround, we need to set it for Reactor output channels 9 and 10, where lead always appears. I'll go ahead and delete the existing stem groups here from our audio tracks to get them out of our way, and we'll just pretend this is our first time through. Now we can arm all 5 of our stem group audio tracks at once. Make sure monitoring is turned on, auto is good, and mute the 2 instances of Reactor and Finalist so we only hear the group tracks that we're recording. As an aside, I've noticed that in Ableton at least, muting these tracks just mutes the main Reactor outputs on channels 1 and 2. The individual Reactor outputs are not muted and are still available to the new audio tracks for our stem groups that we're about to record. Turn these all down -3 dB or whatever so we don't clip the mains that we're listening to, and just start recording from 0. Once it plays all the way through, there are all 5 stem groups captured in a single pass. Now just do a file export audio video for all individual tracks, as I explained in the previous video, and save your work in case you want to come back to it later. The other use for multiple instances that immediately springs to mind is A/B comparing different Finalist mixes of the same stems to see which one you like better. You could potentially set up 3 or 4 different competing mixes and A, B, C, D them to choose your favorite. Of course, you could just do multiple projects one after another, export each mix, load them into a fresh project and A/B them that way. But this approach saves a lot of time, mainly because you're comparing multiple Finalist instances in real time rather than having to generate them for comparison. So let me show you that really quick. To demonstrate, I'll load up a Finalist mix project I did back during beta testing. It's a relatively short track called Wobbling from a project I started a couple of years ago called Illinois Krautrock that I still haven't finished. But I used the tracks from that project for a lot of beta testing for Finalist. At any rate, here is my stem setup for the original Finalist mix, and here's the mix page. I'll hover over each of the groups so that you can see the mix presets I used for each one. Now what I'm going to do is duplicate Reactor and Finalist on track 1, so now I have an exact copy here on track 2. And let's assume I'm fine with all of the stem categorization I made for the first mix, so I'm not going to change anything on the stem setup page. Meaning there's no need for reanalysis either. All of the analysis data got copied along with everything else, and it's still valid here. To reset everything in Finalist, I'll just unlock all of the groups like this, then select Finalist's default mix preset of even, so now everything is using even. Then I can just double click all of the knobs to reset them to their default states, like all of the strength knobs centered and levels at 0, etc. And now this second instance appears as if I've just loaded all of the stems anew and I'm starting over, but this was way easier. Now I'm not going to make you watch me do a second mix, but I'll do that now and add some B-roll to imply passage of time. And here it is, a totally new Finalist mix on the second instance on Ableton Track 2. I didn't really refer to the original mix in any way other than briefly showing it to you a moment ago, so I'm curious as to what I came up with, since I have a lot more experience with Finalist than I did during beta testing 6 months ago. I can see I used some different mix presets and the levels are slightly different. So let's see what the two mixes sound like side by side. To do this, I'm going to use Ableton solo buttons on tracks 1 and 2 here to switch between them. I'm going to be careful to always have one of the two tracks soloed while I'm playing back. Otherwise, I'll have both mixes at full blast combined on Ableton's main bus, which will probably be loud and clipped and nasty. So I'm going to solo track 1 before I hit play, and this is the original mix from many months ago. And then I'll A/B compare the two just by switching which track is soloed. I will use Ableton's transport controls and hit play, and both instances of Finalist should perfectly sync to it. If I want to just jump around and compare the mixes in various sections of the track, again, I just use the Ableton controls like always, and my Finalist instances should follow along. Personally, yeah, I prefer the mix I did just now compared to the one I did 6 months ago. So let's go ahead and select just track 2 with my new Finalist mix on it, and then do a File, Export Audio Video, and export selected tracks only. And now I have my new Finalist stereo mix. Like I said, my next video is going to be about using Finalist to process individual stereo tracks like live recordings rather than multiple individual stems. Until then, if you found this helpful, maybe click like or subscribe and check out the links below. I will leave links for my other Finalist tutorials, a link for an experimental video featuring the original Finalist beta mix of Wobbling, and a link to Tim Exile's store where you can purchase Finalist or get the free trial version. In the interest of full disclosure, I am an affiliate for Finalist and will get a percentage of sales from that link. Now, stop listening to me babble on and go make some music.